Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So one of my most favorite people in Mississauga is our fire chief, Tim Beckett. And I just heard that he has retired. And I think the guy looks 45. So I'm amazed that he's anywhere close to retirement age. But I want to introduce you to the chief of our fire department, a wonderful gentleman, Fire Chief Tim Beckett. Sir, how are you?
Hi, Brian. I'm wonderful, thank you. And I guess I'm the ex-chief now.
Well, ex-chief Tim Beckett, welcome to our show. How long were you chief?
I was chief in Mississauga for about 6.5 years. Wonderful time there. I've got almost 35 years in the fire service. So, for me, it was the right time. Speaking with the family, it was the right time to look at my next options in life.
How did you start? Did you dream of being a fireman when you were growing up?
Well, my father was in the fire service. So as I was growing up as a child, my father was a big role model for me, definitely a mentor in my life. He spent 52 years in the fire service. So he was a fire chief in Markham, the city of Markham, and then was the fire chief in the town of East Gwillimbury for another. So he did 35 years in Markham and 17 years in East Gwillimbury. So definitely a mentor in my life, and I'm just happy to follow in his footsteps.
Did you grow up in Markham?
I did all my public school in Unionville. I grew up in Unionville, and then all my schooling, high school in Markham District High School. So yeah, I grew up in Markham and soon moved to the Newmarket area, Holland Landing, and soon then came out to Kitchener with my wife, and this is where we've raised our family.
Fantastic. I was president of the Markham District High School Students' Council, and my father was a trustee on the Board of Education in Markham.
Huh. We probably crossed paths at some point in time and just didn't know it.
Well, that's ironic and interesting. But we certainly crossed paths in Mississauga, and you were everywhere. You were at tons of events, and whenever there was an emergency, you were there. What are some of the things that you remember about your time in Mississauga the most?
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, the people that we served in Mississauga were absolutely fabulous. Such a diverse community. I had such a wonderful time getting out and meeting so many of the different types of communities that were so blessed in Mississauga. I got involved in a number of charities. Probably the one that was I'm most noted for is Dancing with the Mississauga Stars. Sandra Rossi and I had a wonderful dance performance. I put everything I had on the line, and we just came in a little short on winning the competition. Cliff Silvestri, he beat us out, but I really think Sandra and I talked, and we think we had a better performance. But
it was a 1950s jive performance, as I remember.
It was. We danced to Great Balls of Fire, and it was a wonderful time, a wonderful experience. We raised our whole group raised over almost $100,000 for the charities there, and for me that was a really good introduction to the community. We've done a number of things with the Pink Truck Tour in Mississauga, getting out to support local cancer initiatives at Trillium Hospital. That's a great initiative. Our Mississauga Benevolent Fund, what a wonderful group of individuals they are, putting their time out there to make that happen. So, a lot of the charity events, a lot of public events. I made a commitment to then Mayor Hazel McCallion and Janice Baker that if they hired me, I would make a effort to be in the community as much as possible.
Why does a fire chief get involved in the community? Your job is to stop fires.
Well, one of my jobs is to stop fires. I mean, it's really about preventing fires, but it's also about getting to know the community you're serving. The best way to service a community is to understand who those people are and get out and be there, be approachable, be available, and that was a big goal for mine. It was something that we made happen, and just a fabulous opportunity to meet a lot of wonderful people that in the community.
Well, former Chief Tim Beckett, you did a great job, both in the community and in your role as fire chief. We're going to take a break for some messages, and we're going to come back. I'm going to ask you about some of the emergencies, some of the instances where you felt that you played your role to the biggest extent. Stay with us. We're going to take some messages and come back more with former Chief Tim Beckett of the Mississauga Fire Department in just a minute. Well, welcome back. We are talking with the former chief of the fire department in Mississauga, Tim Beckett. I have to call him Fire Chief Tim Beckett. I can't call him X because there's a man that was everywhere. I met him on numerous different occasions. I had the pleasure of sitting beside him at a whole bunch of different events and watching him perform both on stage and on the dance floor. But Chief, I think unquestionably, the way you impressed me and so many other people in Mississauga the most was the way you handled some emergencies. And the ones that come to mind to me are a big explosion on a street in a house, and you were ever present. Tell us a little bit about that and what your role was, if you could.
So the Hickory Drive explosion that occurred back in 2016 was probably the event that I'll never forget. It was probably the biggest event that I have had to manage. One that occurred on a Tuesday afternoon at about 4:30 in the afternoon. I was actually on my way home when I got the call. I turned around and came back into the explosion area. And the whole area in the Dixie and Burnenthorpe area was ravished by this explosion. So we had not only the house ground zero that was involved, but many homes around it. That night we evacuated close to 700 homes.
700 homes, really?
700 homes. We moved people out, and it was really about, because we didn't know what was involved at that point in time. So throughout the night, we managed to get more and more people back into their homes, but it probably lasted over the course of about 12 days before we were able to turn that scene back to all the homeowners. And then it was well over a year before some of those homeowners were actually back into their houses. It took an opportunity to work with some really wonderful people with the Peel Regional Police. Sean McKenna was an outstanding incident commander for the police side. Him and I worked closely together to work through that situation. One that the fire marshal's office, all the different agencies coming in, we were working around the clock to make sure that the citizens, we could get them back into their homes as quickly as we can. And it was a tough situation for many. One that we made sure that customer service was our main focus on that piece. The emergency itself, we very little fire, but lots of damage, lots of assessment going on, working with insurance companies. One that I'll never forget, and a very high profile media event as well.
What was the cause of it in the end?
It turned out it was a double suicide. So both the husband and wife in the said house had set out to kill themselves, and with that blew the house up, and then the devastation that occurred all around them was tragic.
Well, I watched you on TV and followed you with interest, and I thought you conveyed leadership and confidence, and at the same time reassured people that things were going to be okay and you were under control. Another instance I can remember, I think, was a multiple building fire in Streetsville.
Yeah, that was a rather large fire building under construction. It was going to be I believe a large 4-story apartment building. And that was a challenging one because it was all stick wood framed, under construction, but the wind itself was very heavy that day, and it blew that fire through that construction site rather quickly. We had to contend with a care facility right next door to it. And the problem was, in order to evacuate that building, we would have had to bring buses and that through where the fire was itself. So we managed to protect the care facility and keep the people in the building while we fought the fire. And it was quite a large fire, one that went through the night, and very devastating to that area. Again, having to evacuate a number of homes around the area, but then sheltering in place that care facility. And that care facility was one that really concerned us the most. But we protected it, and at the end of the day, everybody was safe. Again, no loss of life in that one. That's the one thing I can say about my time in Mississauga. Our fire deaths were very, very low. And something that, we can be very proud of in Mississauga and the Mississauga Fire and Emergency Services.
Have you ever lost one of your fire personnel?
We've had some deaths of our firefighters. A few through suicide. Mental health is a big issue in the emergency services. One that we've worked hard to making sure that we look after our people so that they can look after the citizens of Mississauga. And it was, a tragic young man in his early 30s decided one day that he had enough and the demons took over. Sad situation. We've had a number that have lost their lives through presumptive illness, cancers and such, and ones that were more susceptible to those cancers in the fire service. And we're doing a much better job than we did years ago in terms of our protective equipment and our breathing apparatus and that. But the fires themselves are actually becoming more and more dangerous. New construction will burn through these houses rather quickly. And then all the synthetics that you see inside these homes are very toxic. So, we've got to do a better job on the prevention side. And, if we can prevent a fire from happening, then that's a much greater feat for us than showing up and putting the fire out itself.
Now, any loss of life obviously is terrible and devastating, but you have not lost any life in action. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. So I'll continue to knock on wood, and I hope that everybody remains safe that's on duty tonight and throughout the balance of their careers.
Now, I guess the image one gets of a firefighter is of a very masculine, tough, resilient individual. For someone to have, as you say, allowed the demons to take them, that must have been a tough experience.
Yeah, our firefighters, both the men and the women that serve in our service, are subject to things that most people wouldn't see. And we always got to remember we're showing up on somebody's worst day. And that's when they call us and need us the most. And so we get to experience some very devastating situations, stuff that you can never erase from your mind. Children, family members, multiple deaths, very, very tragic events that we see, and things that we've got to continue to work on our resiliency training, making sure that we allow people to deal with these things. We got a strong peer team in Mississauga. We've added to that peer team by bringing on Ajax, the facility dog. And Ajax is a 3-year-old golden retriever. that's available to all our members to come out and visit them at the stations after tough events, and just kind of be there to be soothing and calming. Kind of a really neat addition to the team. But our peer team's second to none anywhere in, I would say, in North America.
Sorry, what do you mean by a peer team?
So a peer team is a group of trained individuals within our organization that will actually go out and help those that are experiencing trouble. So after a bad, devastating call, we'll send in members of the peer team to go in and do some debriefing and diffusion with staff, keep an eye on them, walk and talk them through the situation, and then also be able to refer them to more experienced help if needed. And but definitely one of openness and transparency with this group, and they're a strong group, and ones that continue to look after our own.
So these are firefighters that, in addition to their regular duties, get training in dealing with mental health issues.
Correct. Yep. Mental. Yep. They have a number of different training in how to deal with bereavement issues, how to deal with crisis intervention, things like that. They are able to diffuse, debrief situations, all trained through professional trainers, and then they bring their skill set back to Mississauga and help our own.
Now, I used the word masculine to describe firefighters, and you corrected me by pointing out that you have female firefighters. That's interesting. How many? What's the proportion of your firefighters that are male versus female, and has that changed over time?
It is getting better. It's not where we need it to be. It was generally back when I started, there were no female firefighters on the job with me. Slowly we started to see more and more come on board, but we're still sitting in around a 5% representation of female firefighters. So when you look at in Mississauga, 630 firefighters, and only 5% of them are women, it's disproportionate right now.
Yeah.
We're continuing to work on our attraction to the service. It's not a fact that we didn't want to hire women. It's the fact that we weren't attracting the female firefighters into the service. That's starting to change. We're starting to see, recruit classes that'll have, 25 to 30% female representation now. And I think just given time, we'll get it to that critical mass that is required to be much more representative in the fire service.
What about racial diversity? The police force, even the Board of Education have come under some criticism about lack of racial diversity. Does the police force, does the firefighting force look like Mississauga, or is it primarily white?
We're a predominantly white male organization, and that's from years of hiring practices that saw white males applying. Again, what we're seeing is a difficulty in the attraction portion. So it's about reaching out to these communities to talk to them more about the firefighting as being a viable option for a career.
What's the training? What's the training that you went through?
So while the training I went through is much different than what the training that you'll see today. So when I was hired, I went through a 6-week on-the-job training session. Now I had some previous schooling, but very, very little compared to what they have today. Today, we look at hiring qualified firefighters that have a National Fire Protection Association certification. So they've gone to a college program, got their certifications. It's about a year and a half program to get these certifications. They come in trained to be firefighters. We then put them through a 15-week program that looks at fire prevention, public education, and then the Mississauga aspects of the firefighting side of things. And so it's a lot tougher today than it was in years past from the training aspect. We expect more out of our firefighters, I would say, than we did in years past coming into the service. And that's where we have to do a much better job, is reaching out to those diverse communities throughout Mississauga to identify it as being a viable career option. What we were finding was, first generations, didn't see firefighting necessarily as a optional career for them or their kids. And so second generation Canadians were being channeled into something different, lawyers, doctors, those engineers, those aspects of things. It's not until we started to see the third generation start to open up after talking with the second generation and getting them to talk to their kids and saying, yes, firefighting would have been really great, but my parents wouldn't let me do it. I want to give you the option to be a firefighter. And I think that's the target group that we really need to focus on.
Chief, give me a sense of your career path. How many years did you spend as a firefighter, and then how did you advance?
So I started out as a volunteer firefighter back in 1986 in the town of Markham. Less than a year later, I was full-time in the city of Vaughan. I spent 13 years in the city of Vaughan, had a wonderful career going up to the ranks, finished my career there as a training officer. I then transferred over to the management side of the service and became the deputy and then the fire chief in Whitchurch Stouffville. Spent about 5 years there. Then I came out to Kitchener here and did 10 years as a deputy and the fire chief here before transferring to Mississauga. Some people say I haven't been able to keep a job. I just say that I've taken on increased levels of responsibilities throughout this. So I've got
go ahead.
20 some odd years in management. So I was longer in the management side of the service than I was in the boots or on the trucks, so to say.
So when was the last time you were on a truck?
Well, it would have been about 21 years ago that I was actually on the back of a truck. But it seems like yesterday that I was riding the back of the truck and doing what firefighters do, and that's serving the community. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to look at the strategic aspect of things. I wanted to build strong plans and growth, and help shape the fire service.
We're chatting tonight with former Fire Chief Tim Beckett of Mississauga, one of the most impressive public servants that I've met in my time in Mississauga. We're going to take a break and come back with Tim Beckett for some more in just a minute. Stay with us. Well, we're back with former Fire Chief Tim Beckett, who was chief of the fire department here in Mississauga after being the same thing in Waterloo and quite a career in fire departments in Southern Ontario and the GTA prior to that. Chief Beckett, you have always impressed me with your leadership qualities. Tell me what you think being a good leader is, either of a fire department or of any organization.
Well, I think, first of all, a good leader is one that understands the people they're serving. And, I had a number of, I'll call clients or, people that I had to lead. And that's both the staff that I worked with, but also had to lead the community through fire safety. The staff in Mississauga, I think, is second to none. I always say I had the easiest job in the fire service as the fire chief because I surrounded myself with really strong people. And I think that's one of the pieces in leadership is to recognize, where your strengths are and where you need to surround yourself with people that have the strengths that you don't. And I was fortunate enough coming in to Mississauga to build my own team. After coming in, The two deputies had already announced their retirement, so it was time. It was an opportunity for me to build my own team. I built a team that was different all the way around. So I didn't need more operational people. I had strong operations people. I needed somebody that knew different aspects of business, different aspects of prevention, different aspects of training. And we brought all those pieces together for a strong team. It was about knowing when to get into the weeds and when to stay out of the weeds, and let the people you hired do that work. So it was a really good balance there. I would suggest that one of my other strengths was first thing out of the gate in Mississauga was to go around and visit every staff member. Now, visiting every firefighter, that meant 80 different visits, 20 different stations across 4 different platoons. Took me 80 visits. And each visit was anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, depending on how much they wanted to talk. So it took some time to do that, but it really gave me an opportunity to listen and understand what makes people tick and what ticks people off. And it was really, an opportunity to find that low-hanging fruit and get some small wins in, and then understand the big ticket issue items that needed to be addressed. The other thing I had the opportunity coming in was really working with staff to build a shared vision. And that shared vision for us was to be global, make Mississauga a global leader in fire services. And we were successful. What we wanted to do was put Mississauga on the map by doing the right things. It didn't also always mean doing the expensive things. It was meant doing the right things. And by doing the right things meant people were turning and saying, how is Mississauga doing this? Now, we didn't get everything right, but we got a lot of things right that were well recognized. Political acuity was a really big piece to understand in this world. Working in the public service is small p political and large p political. You got to understand how to maneuver through those political minefields, whether you're dealing with council, whether you're dealing with the public, or whether you're dealing with the senior leadership team, on when to fight and when to say, okay, this isn't a hill we're going to die on. I can remember Janice Baker, the city manager, saying, she would always say, this is not one that we're gonna die on the hill fighting, and we would let it slide. Paul Mitchum was the now city manager, was a wonderful person to work for. He was the commissioner that I reported to for a number of years, and I learned a lot from him. He was a guy that would always be there for you when you needed him, but didn't get into your operational aspects. He was tough but fair, I would say, and one that I was able to learn a number of things from, and I will cherish those memories going forward. Probably the biggest leadership accomplishment that I would say we had the opportunity to do was to build a 5-year master plan. And it wasn't just your normal master plan that you would see coming out of a fire service. This was one that we really had to focus on science and focus on data. So we did a comprehensive risk analysis for the entire city to determine where our biggest risks were, created a risk mitigation plan based on all the science and data that we had, and then built our 5-year master plan out of that. Coming out of that master plan, we realized that in order to meet all the targets we needed to meet, the city couldn't afford it. So what we had to do was look at how we balance public safety with our fiscal responsibilities as well. You give me all the money in the world and I could build you the best darn fire service, but we know that all that money in the world isn't always available. So, how do you build within your capabilities at the same time ensure public safety is there? And that's what we did. We put a large focus on public education and fire prevention. And I think that's the way of the future for the fire services, is to really focus on preventing those fires, getting out into the public and mitigating your risks before they actually become fires themselves. And that way, I mean, the fire service will always have fire response as long as there's people out there that are doing stupid things. The fire service will always be needed. But what we want to do is try to mitigate those down further. That was probably our biggest accomplishment as a leader in the fire service. Probably a legacy piece for me is that 5-year master plan. It really outlines the future for the Mississauga Fire and Emergency Services, one that addresses all 3 lines of defense, and one that I'm quite proud of.
How do you mitigate fires? How do you teach fire prevention? Is it primarily fire detectors, smoke detectors, and sprinklers, or what is it you do in the community to help that?
So what we did was through the data that we had, we determined where fires were happening, what types of fires, and then we started to put public education programs together. And we would go out and I would say we put aggressive and targeted public education programs out into the community, making sure that we hit the hot spots, hit the areas that needed to be hit. And I mean, they'll continue to shift, and we got to keep looking at where those risks are year after year and adjust accordingly. But really, it's about educating people on, how to prevent a fire, but also what to do in the event that a fire does happen. So making sure that they have working smoke alarms, making sure that they have home escape plans, making sure that they understand, building owners understand their compliance requirements. So that's the first line of defense, is public education. The second line of defense is really about looking at code enforcement and inspections. So what we did was a proactive approach where we would try to get into every single building either annually or every 2 years, depending on the risk, and make sure that buildings were in compliance with the Ontario Fire Code. We used it as an educational opportunity at first. We didn't come in with a big hammer unless it was blatant disregard for the fire code. Walk people through it, and then we'd come back and make sure that they were meeting all the needs. What we find is after about 2 or 3 years of that annual visit, we managed to keep people in compliance for years thereafter. And we've seen that in a number of different places. So what we did was we targeted our main risks first, and then it's a 5-year program before we get to all the risks in Mississauga. Again, it's about balancing the public safety with our fiscal responsibility. It's adding staff, it's getting people out there. And then when all that fails, so when the people fail and then the buildings fail, obviously we're going to have fires, and we got to make sure we have a timely response. So we looked at making sure that our stations are best suited and our trucks are best suited for response.
How many stations did you say? You got 20 stations? Is that what you said?
We got 21. We now have 21. When I started, there was 20. We've added one just recently at here, Ontario and Eglinton area. And there's 6 more on the books to be built over the next 10 years. And they're strategically located in areas that and will be built based on the highest demand or highest.
Frankly, I'm shocked. How long were you chief? 7 years?
6.5, yes.
And you only added 1 station. Mississauga must have grown by a couple 100,000 people during that time period.
Yeah, a lot of it was, a lot of our work was looking at making sure that we had the data right, making sure that we had the analysis right, and that took time. We started that project in late in 16, and then presented to council in 18 with the master plan. Council endorsed that plan, and we started the construction on that first station in 19, opened in 20. And then we've got another one that's ready to go. Shovels should be ready to go in the ground shortly, and then one every 2 years thereafter.
Is there a principle on drive time to every building within a certain length of time or mileage radius for the city?
Yeah, so council endorsed a 4-minute drive time from the time a truck leaves the station to the time it's in front of your house would be 4 minutes or less 75% of the time. So that's where we need the additional 6 stations to identify and get us to that 75% target.
Probably an oversimplified generalization, but my sense is that maybe not 7 years ago, but 10 or so years ago, it was all single family homes in Mississauga, and now you've got a bunch of towers, whether they be in a Square One area or along here in Ontario or in Port Credit or whatnot. And you've got massive amounts of industry, around the airport, et cetera, both from a factory standpoint, warehousing standpoint, as well as office towers. Does the equipment and the training that you need to have change fairly dramatically as you go through that densification?
Absolutely. We've looked at our training throughout, always adjusting to new techniques, to new challenges that we have, whether it be airport challenges, whether it be the high rise. When you battling a fire in an 80-story high rise building that you're going to see in the M City area is a lot different than battling a 2-story single family home fire. It takes a lot more staff, a lot more resources, and the techniques will be a little bit different. Our staff, we have a strategy and tactics team that is on top of exploring new techniques all the time, and then putting it through the training division to get that training out to firefighters.
How do you get, if there's a fire in the 72nd floor, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's all around the techniques that we've learned. A lot of it we look at self-contained, trying to contain the fire itself into the room of origin. Sprinklers obviously help contain that. The type of construction helps contain that. But it's about putting lots of resources on the, you're not going to put a ladder. Ladders only go up to about 7.5 stories. So you're not getting a ladder up to the 80th story. So a lot of it's manual labor, climbing, taking the elevators up so far, getting off at certain floors, making sure your systems are all operational, taking your equipment up with you, and then battling the fires up there. Smoke control, fire above and below the fire floor itself is things that you got to continue to manage, and then obviously it takes water to put fires out, and then you got to deal with the water that mitigates itself from the fire floor down, and water travels down. So if you're up high, you're getting water damage in areas down below. So it's about controlling and trying to limit the amount of water we use, but at the same time making sure that we're protecting the building itself.
When I think about emergency services and firefighters, can't help but think about 9/11. Do you guys do domestic or international terrorist training, scenario planning, etc.?
Well, we work closely with Peel Regional Police on those types of threats. Our hazmat team has training in chemical, biological, explosive, nuclear aspects of the job, and has the equipment to deal with those. So we've got a really strong hazardous material team that can go in and work closely with any of the allied agencies on any of these types of situations. And then we've got contracts with the City of Toronto through the province that can come in and assist us in some of the bigger situations that we might encounter. Again, knock on wood, we haven't seen much of that in Mississauga, and I hope that we never do.
Now, you mentioned it. I didn't realize it. Were you responsible for the airport?
So we had a contract to assist with the airport, but the airport itself has its own fire service. So they looked after the primary response on the in the terminals and on the airfield. We provided backup support to them.
We're chatting tonight with former Fire Chief Tim Beckett. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Well, we're back on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It was a real disappointment of mine when I read, I guess it was a week or two ago, that Tim Beckett was retiring as chief of the fire department here in Mississauga, because he was a gentleman that I had a lot of time for. I thought he exuded great political skills, great leadership skills, and obviously did a great job as fire chief. And so it's going to be sad to see him go. And I wish him all the best in his future endeavors. Hope, Tim, that you stay in touch. One of the things, frankly, it's probably the thing that's on top of everyone's mind these days, is COVID-19. How has it impacted the fire department? Have you got to test your people on a fairly regular basis? Have there been any infections? Have there been any people that have gotten really sick? The last thing we want, obviously, is to have a fire and then find out that some of our firefighters can't come.
So, I mean, COVID-19 is unprecedented times for everybody. The fire service itself, really, we didn't stop doing what we do when things hit in March. We adjusted slightly, made sure that we had extra safety protocols in place. Obviously the masking issue is something that's troublesome to be operating in a mask all the time. But it's for everybody's safety. Our biggest challenge was probably making sure that we secured enough PPE for our firefighters. At a certain point in time, we ran out of PPE, and it wasn't so much that we had poor planning. It's the fact that we just couldn't get it in the stockpiles and the types of PPE that we needed. We burned through it quickly. We then transferred over to our self-contained breathing apparatus, the packs on the back with the face masks, and then we secured some more PPE, which allowed us to switch back. We're in the transition right now of moving to a half mask with cartridges that are going to allow firefighters to be safe. And not only protect them, but also protect the patients that they're dealing with. So it's been business as normal for us. I think the biggest challenge is from all our administration side of things on just how we adjust to some work from home capabilities and limiting our access to the public at the fire stations. But our fire response and our inspections, that hasn't changed any, and you're still seeing our staff out doing their jobs and doing them professionally and doing them, quite proudly.
Chief Beckett, do you have anything you'd like to say to the Mississauga community?
Well, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for your support. Thank you for welcoming me to Mississauga. I think the people in Mississauga are absolutely fabulous people. They're vibrant, they're colorful, they're a lot of fun. I've been to a number of events that, we've had some really, really good times and a lot of good causes. They're very, very, very much benevolent in the work that the community does, and that they need to be commended for. I want to thank council. City council has been very supportive of me and of the fire service, something that probably one of the most supportive councils that I've ever worked with. and one that I will never forget. And I just want to thank them for their continued support and the support that they gave to the fire service throughout. My senior leadership team, best in the business, and definitely probably the people I'll miss the most.
Chief Tim Beckett of the Mississauga Fire Department, it's been a pleasure knowing you, and it's been an honor being a resident of the city that you took care of and ensured that we were safe. Thank you very much for your service. We really appreciate it. Please stay in touch.
Thanks, Brian, and I will.
Well, that's our show for tonight. And I got to tell you, there's every once in a while some public servants that you meet in life that impress the heck out of you. And Tim Beckett is one of those. It's going to be a real loss to Mississauga. But if he's a grandfather and he wants to retire, all the power to him. Good luck, Tim.
Thanks, Brian.